Right, I think we'll get going. I'll let people in say arrive. Morning. Welcome to this Creative Grants information session. I'm Michael, Community Arts Officer, Skate, Coordinator of Community Arts and Culture. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which we're meeting on this morning, the Bunurong and Boomerang people. Acknowledge their 60,000 years and more of living and learning and creating on this land. So I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. And I hand over to Julie to take us through all the information for the upcoming Creative Grants rounds.
Okay, so look, you've been muted. Yeah. So if you've got questions, pop them in the chat and Michael will read them out as they come through and we'll address them as we go along rather than do them at the end. So I've got more people coming, which is great. So our creative grants are under theme 2, which is a robust, innovative and diverse economy. So it's very much about helping community groups, organisations, businesses and individuals to support their creative practice. And that can be in any way, any form of creative practice, including heritage, history and heritage too, which is something that's been a little bit neglected. So the crucial thing for you to do really is to get onto the council website and get a copy of this, which is the Community Investment Funding Grants Program Guideline, and that's readily available online. As is, if you move over to the Arts and Culture website, we've actually got a grant writing workshop that we did last year, which is still on there, isn't it? And a booklet on writing a grant and some PowerPoint slides as well. So it might be worth actually having a look at that too if you're not experienced in writing grants. So the crucial thing around eligibility, you've really got to read these guidelines, because what we found last year is that many of the applications that came in weren't eligible because the people weren't, the applicants weren't based in the Mornington Peninsula Shire, or they couldn't show the benefit to the local community, which are two things that are really, really crucial. And there is a certain number of things that we absolutely do not fund, and that's all in here. And, you know, even funding for weapons and ammunition might sound a bit funny, but we did actually have the group apply for a gun club. And so those sorts of things you can't apply for. But I'm just going to read out things that people get a little bit confused about. So applicants' core business, so anything that's business as usual, including but not limited to administration or operational costs, wages, equipment, training, utilities, regular rates, rent, room hire, but that's regular. So that's if you're planning an exhibition or an event or something, the one-off hire is fine. Insurance, personal or travel expenses, sporting uniforms, conference fees, industry fees, alcohol gifts, prizes, appeals, and making cash donations. That was another big one that we found. A lot of people were asking for funding and getting it, and then it was for a charitable cause and the money was going elsewhere. And that's something that we don't do. So just look very carefully at that. And if you've got any questions, just give me a call or email me and I'll go through it with you as to whether something might be eligible or not. And the other important part of that is then once you've got your project together and you've had a chat to me and we've discussed that it actually fits with the guidelines, then you obviously have to start writing your application, which is the most challenging part. But does anyone have any questions at this stage? Because really a lot of what you need to do to start is to actually read the grants program guidelines.
I'll put a link to that in the chat as well.
No, nobody's got any questions?
Chats.
No, that's okay. So really what's going to make it easiest for you is if you decide on what your project is, get your budget together, because it's another thing that we've found that the budgets are not always realistic. So incredibly important for you to get quotes. We don't necessarily need to see them at the beginning. We need to see them at the end with the acquittal, obviously, that the receipts, the things that you've paid. And then once you've actually decided what your project is and what your budget's going to be, then give me a call and we'll have a chat about whether your project fits the guidelines, and then you can go on to the next stage. The last thing you want to do is start filling in a grant application and spending all those hours on it and then finding that you're not eligible. There's very strict guidelines in here about what you can apply for. So I think you'll need to read through. I'm pretty sure it's two, one in each. There's those three themes, but you can't do two things in the one theme, but you can do one in each theme. And then there's the sponsorship as well, which is a completely separate thing. And then, of course, there's your flexi grants that you can. And the thing we changed this year too is that we don't have a deadline we don't close it off at the end of the year. We just do it on a rolling basis. So it means that it's a little bit more responsive, that if you want to put in a grant now and because you need it for September, you'll get that money. If it's approved, you'll get that money straight away. Whereas before you were actually having to wait until we closed them off. So that's, almost 12 months away, which doesn't really work terribly well for anyone really. So it's a little more work for us, but I actually think it's much better for the community that they can put in an application at any time. We look at them every month and then we make a decision. So if you put something in by the 15th of August, we'd be looking at it and letting you know by the 15th of September that whether you were successful or not. So that's just a much easier way of doing things. Once your application has been approved, the money happens really quickly too. A lot of people ask me that, how long it takes. That's another department who looks after that. But what they do is once that approval's gone through, you get a letter outlining what the money is for. And as soon as you sign that agreement, the money pretty much comes through straight away. So it's actually quite a good system. I thought there'd be a lot more questions. So
You coming in?
oh, good.
You can also raise your hand and I can take you off mute if you'd rather ask a question. Chat. Just up at the top. Button there. Got someone asking a question now.
Right.
So Hannah wants to know, do you expect the first applications to be submitted before the 15th of this month?
No, there's no timing. That was just because they don't open until the 13th. So that makes it really a little bit hard. So we'd close it off in August. The 15th of August would be the first time we would close off and do an assessment. Or closing off's not really the right word, but 15th or round about the middle of August, we would do an assessment and then you'd know within a few days. Because this way we're not going to get 30 or 40 at once like we used to. We're probably going to get them staggered, and it makes it a lot easier to doing the assessments. So, but yeah, that's what we'd be aiming for with the grants opening next week. I think it's the 13th of July. And then we would then absolutely just start, open on the 13th. Start looking at them pretty much straight away as they started coming through.
So John's got a question. I'm just going to put John's mic on. So just turn yourself off.
Okay. Yeah.
G'day.
Good morning. I came in a little bit late and I missed the name of the lady who's speaking to us. And I would like to know her phone number and email address, please.
Well, my name's Julie Skate.
I'll put it in the chat for everyone.
And I'm the coordinator of arts and cultural development. You'll find it in the guidelines, which is what I started with, is that all the program managers' details are in there. So on page 11 of the guidelines, you'll see all the people who manage grants, their email addresses in there. So,
okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
People just come in.
Well, I might just, for those ones who have come in a bit late, Michael has put in the chat a link to this, the grants program guidelines, which is what you really need to read to get a successful application in, because there's a lot of information in there about what we do fund and what we don't fund and what your eligibility is. Like there's a full table there on some grants anyone can apply for, but some grants it's only certain people. So we've got some business grants which businesses can apply for, but the creative grant, a commercial business can, but they can't apply as an individual resident, whereas access and social inclusion and heritage grants you can. So there's a few things that are different from last year. This is a much more streamlined process, and it's a more rigorous process as well. So it kind of contradicts itself. But it is definitely more rigorous than it has been in the past, where people have been given money without having to go through this sort of the system. And it's all about good governance. It really came about because the state government, before I started here a year ago, the state government had been doing some work with local government on how they manage their funding, and they brought in some laws, and that law insisted that everything had to be open and transparent, and that's why all this has come about, because we've had a lot of people saying, I haven't actually ever had to put in anything like this before. And that's why we're trying to run a few workshops and things so that people understand what's going on.
So Hannah has another question. Do you have any further detailed information as to what type of expenses can be included in the budget, or examples from previous applications?
We can't use examples from previous applications. You really just have to go through the guidelines and look at what you're eligible for and what you're ineligible for, because that's what's been passed by council. So they've made that decision as to what you can. But in general, we find that what we've been doing is funding. Someone has an exhibition, we can fund the hire of the exhibition space. We can help them with framing. We can help them with material costs. We do encourage people to put artist fees in there. Really important that they actually do. You do pay yourselves. But, if you decide you want to run an art prize and you want to use our funds for a prize, you can't actually do that. But all the infrastructure to set it up, you can. If you want to do a mural or something like that, this is not the right grant for you. It's placemaking grants that you would go to for murals. But if you are interested in doing a mural, we've just written a mural toolkit, which is online as well. A lot of the projects that we've funded, there's been a variety. We've funded people who are looking to get their works published. We've, as I said, exhibitions, we've done performances, we've done events tend to go into the community events grant. We did fund a couple of those because we had a bit of money left over. So we'll do that if there's money left over. Sometimes it goes over to another oversubscribed funding, or we might just say, okay, well, this is fairly close to what we do, so we'll fund a small event instead of the community events grant. So yeah, really the best thing you can do is once you've got your idea, contact me and we can talk through what might be eligible and what isn't.
Yeah,
because that's important at the end of the acquittal, because if you don't acquit properly, you won't be allowed to apply for anything else again.
Yeah, and just having been on a couple of the selection panels, there is a chance to go back and forth. So if there is something that is standing out on the budget or doesn't seem quite right, we can come back to you and move it around. So it's not, we want to try to get it as good as it can be by application time, but if it's not and there's a few questions, then that's okay. It's not going to be you've got something in there so you're not getting the money. It's a chance to go back and forth. But I guess the guidelines is to try to get it to as much of a finished stage by application as possible, just to avoid that back and forth. So
because if you've got a really good idea, we won't knock it back. We'd rather talk to you about it. Yeah.
So I've got Rodney who wanted to ask a question. I'll chuck your mic on now, Rodney, and have a chat. Are you there, Rodney?
You're on mute, Rodney.
Yeah, you might have to take yourself off mute.
Thanks. Yeah. Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Julie. I heard so that, you know, I love the idea that you can apply for things throughout the year rather than just one hit, which is a great innovation. The question I have is, does the project, any project that you were lucky enough to get funding for, does it need to finish within the 12 months of when you are when you get the funding, or within the 12 months of the financial year?
It's generally within 12 months, but what we do is allow a variation. So if a project looks as though it's going to go over, I've just approved a variation yesterday for a film that was funded in the last round, and something occurred during the filming that meant that they couldn't finish it off. And so we've given them another 6 months. So that's, and another person who had an exhibition and then couldn't exhibit where they needed to exhibit has been given another 12 months. So we generally don't extend beyond another 12 months, but absolutely we can do variations if that's needed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rennie. I think John has another question as well. All right, go for it, John.
Yep. I'm running a choir, or representing a choir, an incorporated choir,
Yep.
and it could be. I'm looking at the grant eligibility page, table 3 on your booklet. I see creative grants or performing art grants,
Yep.
and how would is that, how would I decide which way to go with that, or should I discuss it with you personally?
Well, you need to discuss it with me. The performing arts development grants are much more difficult to get. It would depend on how much money you were hoping for, because performing arts development grants are an open amount and they're usually for a very large project. That's what we tend to have funded. So, and very much around development rather than performance ready. So it would depend very much on what you were hoping to get out of it. You'd have more of a chance of getting a creative grant than the performing arts grants. The guidelines for the performing arts development grants are quite, it's quite strict, quite structured now. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, yeah, not the main thing, but one of the big deciding factors is performing arts development grant is around new works. So like innovative and
diverse,
maybe not diverse,
diverse.
maybe not seen on the peninsula before.
Yeah.
Whereas the creative grant is made to support groups who are already doing performances in a performing arts sense or something like that. But if it was in a choir sense and it was a new work developed with someone that you've never worked with before, maybe bringing different musicians down onto the peninsula or something like that, then it might go over to the performing arts development grant.
But it would be a substantial project. It wouldn't be a small project. It would be quite a big one. So
yeah, fair enough. No, well, that's fair enough. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John. How are we going? Do we want to ask any more questions, or can people? Rodney's got another one now, so I'll allow Rodney to get going. There's a few more questions coming now. Yeah, I think it's going to start flying.
Just when there's a bottleneck there.
Yeah, that's right.
With the priorities in the 2024 plan, are they listed as? I had only a quick read last night, but are they actually listed as priorities, or are they? What do they come under in the actual plan?
Priorities is probably not a good word. They're actually in the arts and culture plan. They're our goals or our strategies.
Goals. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's but everyone has different terminology as to what they. But the priorities are actually anything that, if you read through the music plan as well, and if you're a musician, you'd read through the music plan and also read through the arts and culture plan, then you'll get a good sense of what's in there and what your particular project might align with. What you mustn't do is what one person did was, we've got a lot of pull quotes in there in the arts and culture plan from people who were consulted who said lovely things about arts and culture, and some people were actually using those quotes. Well, they're not part of the strategy. That's just like putting an image in there. It's something interesting and pretty that, but not the strategy. But once again, if you've got any questions about where your project fits, just contact me and we'll find a spot. But yeah, but those of you who are, you know, like John and Miss Choir, I'd be looking at the music plan as well to see if there's anything there that actually aligns with what you're doing. So the more you meet those criteria, the closer it will be. So yeah. So really, yeah, that's all listed in there on page 28, the music plan. So really important that we have those sorts of things. If it's not, but you know, that's an interesting thing because single-use plastic is another thing that's come up too, and that's probably going to be more for events or if someone's having an exhibition opening, that we really discourage that too. So we'd like to see that there's some kind of yeah, that's addressed in some way too. So
Right, thanks, Rodney. Got a few more questions in the chat. One from Chris. Is there a maximum grant amount for?
well, the
Creative
creative grants are 10,000. So you can have up to $10,000. Some people actually did get $10,000 with the Performing Arts Fund. That's an open amount. So, but obviously, if it's a massive amount of money, then we expect a massive project out of it. So, but yeah, it's just entirely dependent on your budget and how you can justify the amount of money that you're spending. The more information you can put in your budget, and the more likelihood that there is that you'll get more money.
Yeah, and in that selection process, it often does come down to that budget, the budget lines. But once it's decided that it's a good project or a good event or whatever it may be, then really do go into the budget in quite some detail. And if there is something that is outside of what we would fund, then that's probably when you start going backwards from that maximum amount, I think.
Because we have done that in the past where we had someone ask for $3,500 worth of catering, and we thought the project was great, and that asked for $10,000, so we gave them the balance, the $6,500, and just said we don't fund catering. And their response was, well, we're known for our catering, and my response was, we should be known for your projects, not your catering.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, just be aware of things like that are just not. But we'll as Michael said, if we think your project's worthwhile, we'll go back to you and say, hey, that, and you know, evidence in your budget is really good. If you've got a quote from someone, you know it's going to cost $500 to hire the hall, and there's a quote in there, or it's $250 a day for your lighting person or whatever. Those sorts of things are really, any evidence is always really helpful, so that we know that you've actually thought about the budget and not just figure out of your head.
Yeah. So Hannah has a question, which is, if successful in the grant, can you share more about what is involved in the acquittal process?
Well,
and do we need to keep detailed record
Yes.
receipts of how funding is used?
that's a really good question. I think the mere fact that you're actually acknowledging an acquittal at the beginning is excellent, because this is what I say to people all the time. Start your acquittal process as soon as you start your project. Just start putting everything aside, keeping a spreadsheet of what you've spent, even if it's your hours. I mean, volunteer hours are another thing that we do ask for, and so that's always really good to factor that in. But yeah, because we need to see evidence. If you put in your budget that the money, I'm getting $5,000 from council, and it's going towards this, and this, and then you don't send us evidence of the spending for those 5 things, and send us evidence of other things, that's not really relevant, because we want to see what we've actually funded and know that what we've funded is not catering, it's not it's not someone's salary. So that's really, really important. I just saw nuts fee one pop up there too.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
before we get onto that, someone just asked in the guidelines it mentions up to $5,000. Is that an error?
That is an error. I did let them know a few weeks ago, and
So the online.
Well, page, this one's wrong because I printed this out before they said that I picked up a lot of faults in this one. So it's $10,000. I think maybe check again. They may have put the new one back up or there were a number of things that were wrong in it. Yeah, certainly on.
Yeah, it does say that on the new one. So we'll get that updated, but yeah, it is 10,000.
It's definitely 10,000. Okay, that's it. Because I did have 5,000 in there initially, so, but it's not.
Apologies for that. Thank you for picking up on that. Just means you can apply for twice as much as you thought. This is, yeah, artist fees, as you alluded to. How do we determine an appropriate fee for this? Is it determined by hour, per week, per month?
Well, that's up to you, but we go, generally when we pay someone, it's NAVA rates is what we go by. And the NAVA rates are very specific because they're for an early career, mid-career, senior artist and for a particular project. So that's what, if we run workshops, that's how we determine what we pay people, because we consider ourselves a mid-sized organisation because that fits with our arts and culture budget and staffing, not the overall council, which would be a major one, but we don't have access to that money. So I checked with NAVA and that's what we pay. But as a small organisation or an individual, you have to determine what your level is, whether you're early career, mid-career, and what your fee will be. And if we look at it and think, okay, you're not a significant artist and yet you're charging a significant artist's fee, we won't pay that. We'll just come back to you and say, hey, looking at your career path, you're really a mid-career or an early career, and this is what your fee will be. But we can put the NAVA rates up.
Yeah, I'll just put a link to the
Right, thank you.
online. It starts with that online basics pretty much.
Yeah.
You can sort of go off that. But yeah, we are confirmed as a mid-level
organisation, so that's what we pay. But it doesn't mean that that's what you charge. You really have to determine that yourself. And that's for visual artists, but the musicians, it's the MEAA fees. So we do expect to see if there is an artist fee in there, whether you're a musician or a visual artist or a performer, some evidence of how you've determined that particular cost.
Yeah. Good questions.
Yeah, they are really good questions. Now that you've all warmed up.
Yeah, especially the ones where it's wrong.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, it's interesting. I thought that they'd put in the revised version.
Yes, I've been looking at that one too.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. This went up too soon, and I went through it and just kept picking things up. It was like, yeah, because even in the performing arts development grants, it says it's up to $30,000. It's not. It's an open amount. It's just at the $30,000 mark. We have to then interview people, and then we have to refer it on to a more senior person who's got higher delegation to approve.
One question has come up. I've spoken to people about being eligible for one grant per financial year. That can also, if you can get a creative grant and a performing arts grant.
Yeah, and you can also get other. You can, and people have. That is possible, but you can also apply for grants in another theme. So you can only do one project per theme, but if you think you fit more, you've got those themes. If you think your one project fits, you might be doing something that's to do with climate action. It's a different theme from the creative grants, but you would need to check with the program manager, and the same with the sponsorship. I don't have anything to do with sponsorship. And that's going to be very hotly contested, and that's more operational funding for 1 to 2 years. So that actually needs to be, you need to have a discussion with the relevant program manager just to ensure that you're not actually putting in 2 applications and you're not eligible. But definitely with the Performing Arts Development Grant and the Creative Grants, yeah, you can, 2 different streams.
All right. So if there's any more questions, put your hand up or put them in the chat now. If not, I will put Julie's details in the chat once more. And just because I'm not sure if the people who joined after I put things in the chat saw them, I'll put the link to the grants and sponsorship
Yeah.
booklet that we're talking about now, as well as remind you, if you haven't seen already, that we are doing some of these Q&As for the Performing Arts Development Grant next Tuesday in the morning and in the evening. So you can head back to the website and RSVP and get the link for those as well if you wanted to come in and have a chat specifically about Performing Arts Development Grants. Yeah, if not, yeah, feel free to reach out with any further questions, and really excited to see some of the projects coming in, and having that ability to yeah, fund things throughout the year, because sometimes ideas come outside of grant
It
funding
was
rounds, and
really,
it's
really
frustrating.
sad.
So,
There were some terrific ideas that came through
Yeah.
after we'd closed, but unfortunately it's given permission to just keep rolling it over, which is really good.
that's right.
So did you put in a link to the workshop, the writing workshop that we did last year, and the booklet?
I'll
Because
send that out.
yeah, because it's our separate website. That's on the Arts and Culture website under resources, but that's actually really, you might find that really useful, particularly when it comes to the acquittal section. If you think, I'm not sure whether I updated the booklet with the acquittals, but it's definitely in the PowerPoint presentation. There's a lot in there about acquittals.
And also knowing that if you were successful, that you would get acquittal information from Nadine and the grants team of what is required and how you would go about that. Right, looks like John's got one last question, I think, unless anyone else has one. Go, John.
Yeah, I've put my name down for a grant writing workshop, which is tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. at Queen Street, Mornington. And I'm just wondering whether or not that's appropriate for my needs. Establishing a new choir. I see creative, I'm in the creative area rather than performing arts development, I would say. And we have hundreds of small expenses rather than any one major project at this stage. Could you advise me about whether I should be going to that grant writing workshop?
Without knowing what your project actually is, it'd be really hard to advise, because we don't run, we did run one that was for creatives, but these ones are now all being run as a lot for any particular, so it's a sort of a generic one, but it would give you the opportunity to talk to the person there about your project and what is eligible, because that would be the same across all grants. Doesn't change the eligibility, whether it's, you know, as I mentioned, those things that listed them, what's listed in here, that's the same across all. We don't change them and say, oh no, we'll happily fund ammunition or catering. But it's the same for all of us. So I would recommend you go.
Yeah. No, that'd be good. It'd be a good investment by me for 2.5 hours in order to face to face with people.
Yeah, and that is a long workshop.
Yeah, I think so. And also, I
really
think
long workshop.
It'll probably give you some skills outside of these grants as well. You know, because look, I mean, working in this space for so long, you realise, you know, we're talking about festivals last week and how there's festivals that have full-time grant writing. You know, people working just to about the grant. So I think it's definitely worthwhile a couple of hours, and then you may get some clarity for these grants on what you want to, which stream that you want to go for. But I think in general, it'll be a great investment, John.
Yeah.
And we do have a few other questions about those grants. How often are we running them? They are on the same page as the link for that, the funding guidelines. If you just scroll down a little bit, there's grant writing workshops. There's tomorrow, and then there's also Thursday, the 14th of September, that are run by the council, and how often we do those. Yeah, we've done one like of a creative specific
Yeah.
stream, but the general ones are usually when the grant rounds open up after the end of the financial year.
And because there are a few that are like this one, just roll around, they're going to be available throughout the year apparently, but that's a separate department from us. We actually don't run those. So
Yep.
Not sure. So I don't think we'll be offering another one because we've done that. That one's online and we put a lot of effort into running that one and then developing up the booklet and everything. So those resources are there.
Yeah, I'll send those through to everyone who's registered for these ones. And Hannah has a question. Is the online grant writing workshop in the arts and culture resources similar to an in-person session?
I've never been to an in-person session, so I don't know. I would imagine we'd cover all the same things. It's really very much about, because I delivered that workshop with Anita, who was the team leader of economic development, and she'd spend a lot of time, not just working here, but in state government and running these sorts of businesses and business workshops. So I think it would be very, very similar. I think what I spoke about more than anything, you'll find it's in the, is about a good narrative, writing that really, really good narrative and making sure that people understand exactly what it is that your project is about, because I did find that with some of them was this stream of consciousness and you couldn't actually work out what the project was. So that around that clarity is really, really important. And I think they'll tell you exactly the same things. It really is not all that different. So, but as I said, if you've got any questions, just contact me. We'll talk you through it anyway.
And Margaret asked how to get a copy of the booklet online, or do we request one? Assuming you're talking about the guidelines booklet, so it's just a PDF that you download.
Which, yes, you just go onto the council website and type
I'll
in
put the link in once more because
funding or grants programs, and then it will come up. That page will come up with all that information.
Yeah, it's not something that we would print and have available.
No, because we
try to save.
But if you do need assistance, if you're culturally and linguistically diverse, then we have Lauren Calamagno, who's our Access Officer. She will help people. We also have interpreting services if that's needed too. So you just need to let one of us know if you need some assistance and we can arrange that.
Yeah.
But we can't write the grant for you. We can just assist.
As much as when good ideas come in, it feels like we should, but
yeah,
I want to.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, hopefully, I think just after not being in this space for so many years and really wanting to empower the community to fund your great ideas and to get to the stage where, as I said, it's not just these grants. You may want to go on to further, larger grants and really grow your idea or your choir or whatever it may be. And very excited to see what ideas are coming in, and don't be afraid of reaching out and asking whether we think that it's a good thing to pursue, or if you're here, you probably already have an idea that is a good idea. So let's try to get to the best stage of being able to fund it that we can, I guess.
Yeah, and we will do everything we can to help you do this, but this is a very simple form in Smarty Grants. It is the simplest form I've seen in terms of actually asking for funding. Over the years, I've been really, really lucky to be successful in getting a number of grants, including Australia Council 4-year funding for an organisation I worked for, and that was a massive 2-month project to actually pull that grant together. So this one we've simplified it down to, I think it's actually a really, really simple form, but it's one step before you then go to Creative Vic, which is a much bigger process for people like that.
Yeah.
And as I said, we're here to help you. We can't write it for you, but we're certainly here to help guide you if you've got any, and even if it's we look at your project and think it's worthwhile, but it doesn't fit our guidelines, doesn't fit our particular grant program, it might fit another one that we can recommend.
Yeah.
But I'd also, it's really worthwhile going on to Mornington Peninsula has Grant Finder, so you can actually log on to that and it will email you with, you can be very selective about what you want in the way of grant, what you're interested in, and that will email you on a weekly basis of what funding is available. So it's actually a really good tool to have that.
Which is on that same page as the link.
Yeah, it's all on that
Yeah,
page.
so funding finder.
Yeah, there's a ton of information there, which is really good.
And I think Hannah's got probably, which will be our last question. But any questions that come up after this, you can email through.
Yeah.
And there's also another session this evening. If you do have a question that you want to ask in, don't want to email, you want to ask again, there's another one at 6 p.m. this evening. 6 p.m.
Yeah.
6:30. Just remember I put it before the start of the cricket. Anyway.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Right, Hannah, last question. If we submit an application in July, will it only be viewed after the 15th of August?
Yeah, we won't have time to, we won't have time.
It could possibly be viewed, but
It could
it
possibly
won't
be
be
viewed, the
assessed by the
assessment
panel.
won't be
Yeah.
done. So we'll probably look at it, have a discussion. Well, we would have a discussion before you put in the application. That's the idea. And then, we need a few weeks to actually pull the panel together and have 3 or 4 to assess, because there's no point pulling the panel together if we've only got one grant. So it will be very much determined by that. But the thing is that because it's not going to be very many that we have to go through, and that normally we end up with this massive matrix of things that we have to try and assess against each other as well.
Yeah.
We're not having to do that now, so it'll be a much quicker process. So if we look at it it may be earlier than that, because I think I've got to do the performing arts development ones on the 15th, 16th. So it might be before that. You'd know very quickly.
Yeah.
We'd make the assessment really quickly, like within a day, you'd know. So it's the best we can do. The alternative is that you wait till the end of this financial year to get your money. So,
Yeah, it's just from trying a few different ways in the last year, and that tended to work the best, and allowed for, this. We did the monthly for events, and it allowed for events that needed a bit of extra funding to go forward. And it was really great to be able to have that turnaround rather than say,
wait 6 months.
wait 6 months, and it's like, that just may mean that things don't go ahead, which is what we don't want. So, but this is end of the session for this morning. Thank you all for coming. Any further questions can be emailed through, or you can duck in this evening if there's anything that comes up during the day. But we're here to discuss these ideas, and really looking forward to what sort of projects are bubbling away out there in the community. It's really exciting. So
Very exciting.
all right. So I think that's it. Got a few thumbs up. Thanks, and thank you guys very much.
Thank
And we'll
you.
be speaking to a lot of you soon, I'd imagine. So have a great day. See you later.